morning, Suzuki community. It's Myron at Zuk's Off-Road. I just want to tell you that today's sponsor is Axe Facts. We're going to give you a link to Jim Cameron's website. It's actually older than I am in the Suzuki world. It has all kinds of information and schematics, and it's got links to different kinds of Suzuki people. So anyways, Ack is a fellow that I met 2010 at Zukapalooza. He's also met him at 2007 at Zuki Crawler, so he's been around longer than I have. You want to check out his channel, it's a donation channel, and you'll see his little name right here, and then in the description we'll give you his website. So thank you, Jim, for sponsoring us today, and we're going to be talking about 8-valve heads for Suzuki's 1.3 engines, 1.6 engines. What's the difference? What's the tricks? What's the problem? So let's go ahead and get started in this. I've got two heads with me, obviously, a 1.3 and a 1.68 valve. How do we tell the difference by looking at it? Well, the 1.3 has a mechanical fuel pump. A 1.3 will bolt on to a 1.6 block. You could literally run a mechanical fuel pump on a 1.68 valve engine. What's the takeaway from that is that you will have 1.3 intake and 1.3 exhaust, so you won't be getting as much air into that bigger cylinder. So one of the things that we like to do here at Zuk's Off-Road is all of our 1.3 heads on all of our engines have larger exhaust valves, because we really do a lot of those my sides, and the velocity that goes into the engine on Bernoulli's principle, it's quite a bit more air, and so we're trying to get that air out because it's really getting pushed in there by the car. So that's pretty much the main difference. However, there's some differences you need to know about. Before I get into the differences and the problems, I want to let you know that there are freeze plugs right here in these heads. 1.3 blocks do not have freeze plugs. 1.6 blocks have block freeze plugs. Easy way to tell the block without looking at it. I mean, looking at the serial number. And so, got a phone call this morning, 6:30, woke me up from Alabama. Said a friend of mine said that I need to call you because I have a problem. And I told him, you got to give me a minute on this one. You just woke me up, and it doesn't make sense. But here's your problem. So he is pouring oil into the head, doesn't have the valve cover on. He does not have the water log on yet behind the water pump, and all of a sudden the water pump fills up with oil and it starts pouring out of the block where the water log would be. So the only place after the head gasket, of course, if the head gasket blows, but if you have a new engine and you're getting oil and water mixed up, here's the issues right here. This is also where 1.3 and 1.6 heads, they have freeze plugs. They get corroded. They get leaky. So before you ever bolt a head on, I don't care. We do it here even when it comes out of our shop. You know, our machine shop that we use, because we don't actually do the engine machining. We have that done by a professional company. So when we put water on these freeze plugs, we let it sit for an hour. If the water's still there, we don't have a problem. If the water leaks, we take the head back and tell them to do that freeze plug better. So this is the only place after a bad head gasket, and so on a new engine you wouldn't have a bad head gasket. So don't forget to check these freeze plugs before you assemble your engine, before you put coolant and water in. Okay? Now, one of the things that I've been talking about at the differences on these for the longest time is that there are different distributor housings, and we're going to take pictures for you and show you these blow-up pictures so you get an idea what I'm talking about. So you have a 1.6, you have a 1.3, and then people say, well, I got a carbureted 1.68 valve, so I bought a high-performance cam. There are no high-performance cams. It's a 1.3 cam. They just sell it for a 1.6 because it fits. Now, the problem with using a 1.3 cam on a 1.68 valve head is that a lot of people find out that the distributor won't fit on the 1.6 housing. How do you tell a 1.6 housing from a 1.3 distributor housing? Well, there's no ground bolt on a 1.3. You remember, you took this bolt out and it had a wire going to the firewall because they want the distributor housing to be grounded better. The 1.6 has a bolt for the ground wires because there's multiple ground wires on a 1.6 EFI 1.68 valve. And so, believe it or not, these are different. What does this mean to you? When you put a 1.3 cam into a 1.68 valve, because you're going to run a MySide, or you're going to run a copy of it, or you're going to run a Weber or a 3K, you're not going to run EFI, so you're putting in this high performance cam, because putting in a high performance cam on EFI doesn't make sense, because the computer's a closed loop and you're not going to get the extra gas that a cam will produce for you, and so it's just going to make that injector run a little bit leaner as it sees that extra gas coming in from the cam. And to emphasize what I'm referring to, when you get your concept of a cam 360 degree circle, you get a 272 cam. That means for 272 of the 360 degrees, the lobe is moving the rocker. That's what it means. So you open the rockers longer means you get more fuel in. You get more gas out, or I should say expended gas. That's all a cam is. So I remember the first time I put one in a Samurai, because see, back in my hot rod days, when I really thought, when I was younger and I thought I would have a Camaro shop, when I was in my 30s, I had a really nice collector hot rod Camaro. So I thought I'd do that when I got older. And then I fell in love with the Suzukis, and here I am today. So back then, you put in a cam, you're going to get 15 horsepower. You put a cam in a Suzuki engine, go to the dyno, you're going to be pretty disappointed. You're going to get about 2 horsepower. That's it. And how you get that 2 horsepower is it uses more fuel. So your fuel economy goes down. You feel like you're going faster, but once you really realize, and that buyer's remorse sets in, you realize, oh, that cam didn't do that much for me. I'm not a big fan of high performance cams. I'm really not. But in certain applications, they make sense. Because of all the turbos we do, we don't want high performance cams. Okay, so not only is there a difference in these distributor housings with that ground wire, the most important one is that on a table, these are different heights. You can see it in the still picture that when we set them on the table, take a picture, one's a different height. What does that mean to you? It means that the gear, the helical cut gear that's driving the distributor, is not centered when you take a 1.3 distributor housing and you bolt it onto a 1.6/8 valve head, because the distributor of your 1.3 that you're trying to put that engine in will fit into this one, but it won't fit into this one. So you want to use a 1.6/8 valve distributor housing that we have modified for you so that that long 1.3 distributor fits and your gear is lined up. This is what's killing a lot of these distributors, because helicals want to run in the center. When they run off center, they push. And this is why you take a 1.3 distributor out of a 1.6/8 valve after a couple of years of running it, and you just shake the shaft. It's going to fail because now it's ruined itself. So this is really important to line up. Over the years, I probably have talked to 200 people. They mention, oh, I've got this, I got that. I go, oh, would you shine a flashlight down there and tell me if the gear's centered? It's not. Their distributor's messed up. Trying to save you guys some aggravation. Now, there is a difference in the 1.3 cams. You either have a lobe to push the rod, or you don't have a lobe. EFI. Well, that's where those cams went that were EFI in the Samurai. They went into the 1.6/8 valve head, and they went with a different distributor that doesn't have the boss on the end. So we can either modify the distributor housing, or you can cut the boss off of your 1.3. Not a good idea. We don't like that idea. So anyways, that's something I wanted to talk to you about. All right. Let's go on to the mechanical fuel pump problems that people have. As I just mentioned previously, if you have a 1.3 with a lobe, you can see it here behind the gear, so that as I rotate it, the rod goes in and out. One of the biggest calls that I get is, I put on a new mechanical fuel pump and it's not squirting any gas. What did I do wrong? So it's a tough one to do. I'm going to admit to you, it really is a tough one. So here's how I do them. I rotate the engine so that the rod is all the way in. Then when I put the fuel pump on, I lift it towards the hood of the car, and it will stop before I can put it flush. And so that's your ticket. If you can put your mechanical fuel pump on and you flush it right away, it is not going to work because the lever is below the rod, and what's going to happen, the rod is going to break a half moon shape into the lever of the fuel pump and it won't pump fuel. So turn the engine, make sure the rod's all the way in. As you put the pump on, lift it up a little bit, and as you tighten the nuts, some are bolts, some are nuts, as you tighten them, you'll hear it go squeak, squeak, squeak as you tighten, because now it's pushing, the rod is pushing the lever, right on the lever, and that's what's making that squeak noise. That's going to work the first time you put that in. Now, a couple of things we want to talk about. What are the threads on these 1.6 8 valve, 1.38 valve? All of the studs are 8 millimeter by 125. When we process a head for our engines, we are going to stud everything. We're going to take this stud right here, which is an 8 millimeter by 125 hardened set screw. We're going to put that into every single one of our holes on both sides, intake and exhaust. If you've had a Samurai for a while, you may have noticed that the bolts will vibrate out of the engine on the exhaust manifold. We stop that problem with a little stud kit. We provide the studs, we provide a lock washer, we provide a new metric flange nut, and that stops them from vibrating out. Now, if you've got a dirty hole, do not run a tap in here because taps remove material. It's called a chaser. Now you can, if you're smart, take a bolt and you can cut down the threads, a edge, and then you can use that as a chaser. But there's also companies that sell the chaser tools in the metric, and that's what you should use. Because remember, if you're going to tap it, you're going to remove material. That's not a good idea. Whenever you use a stud, you don't go all the way to the bottom tight. You go to the bottom and then back it off to give it a little bit of an expansion gap. All right. Now, some of you may wonder about these. What are the thread on these screws? And why are these screws here? Well, one of the biggest problems that people have is they don't take their valve cover off very often until it becomes just a great big leaky mess. And then they'll find one or two of these screws have popped out. Now, that's a big deal because your oil pressure is going through where these holes are. So let's say you have a glass valve cover here, you're just going to see oil squirting up. That's not good. The oil's supposed to be bathing the cam. It's supposed to be lubricating the rockers. It's not supposed to be just shooting up into the air. So these are 6 millimeter by 1.0. In fact, you can go to your Ace hardware store. I'll read this to you. This is a M6 by 10 millimeter or by 1 pitch. So let's do this the correct way. It's metric 6 times 1.0 pitch, 25 millimeter, and this is a countersunk because you're going to have a really hard time finding these soft Phillips. These are hard. When you put them in, you take a punch real close, you bang it. We have a picture of that to show you. What I've done is deform the metal so this cannot back out. Because they do back out. They do get into the springs. They do cause damage, even the soft ones. So we don't want these coming out. So you got a picture of that. All right, another thing. Okay, let's talk about this. Why do so many people kill their engines just doing a head gasket? Because the head gasket fits perfectly 4 ways on the 8-valve engines, but only one way will save the engine. If you take a look at this hole right here, right there, and you can see the casting comes up here, this is an oil galley. If you cover this hole with your head gasket, the cam, the rockers, they can't get lubricated. In about 4 minutes after trying to run the engine, with you not checking to see that oil is bathing the cam, you're going to have a ruined head. The cam freezes, it moves, because there's no oil. There's no protection here. There's no cam bearings. This is just a steel cam rotating in an aluminum hole, and we need that bath in there to protect it. So one of the things you should always do when you're rebuilding your engine at home is you should get a very thin wire, and you should push this up here until you see it come out the hole. If any dirt comes out the hole, make sure that you spray carb cleaner and really clean it, and clean the corresponding hole. Now this is where your oil galley plugs are, your big ones. So you take your big ones out of the block, and then in the front of the block you find that matching hole. You run a wire down there. If it comes through really easy, no dirt, no debris, great. If you start getting flakes of dirt, flakes of dry oil, get some carb cleaner in there. It's too small to put like in a brush because it's high pressure. And this is, again, something I always like to say when I talk to people about fuel pumps. Fuel pumps don't make pressure. Restriction does. That's what makes pressure. That's why it's a small hole. That's why on our my sides they work so much better than any kind of bent tube, because that is going to have fuel dropout. We run a really small hole on the my side blocks, very short slide, and you can see that the fuel is a mist. It's just Bernoulli's principle in everything. Smaller hole, higher pressure. And so you make sure you clean that out. You know, that's a lot today to talk about, and that's a lot of information. And the more I can get on these YouTube videos and the comments that I've been getting from you, like someone's been asking me, actually a couple people asked me, do a 1.6 16 valve OBD2 harness. I'm thinking about doing that. I know that it would really hurt some of the other businesses, but me personally, I'm not doing 16 valve engines anymore for like projects. We have a couple here that are being rebuilt for customers, but today's just 8 valve. I don't want to get off track. Anyways, I have talked to some people about this. We own the die for some of the Suzuki stuff. We make some really, really cheap, good gasket. A lot of the engine kits, even from Japan, they have really thin intake manifold gaskets. And I just, from time to time, Felpro, they have a really good gasket here. It fits perfectly for us. It's Velcro part number 730. It's perfect. It's for a Ford, but it's perfect for the Suzuki Samurai. These are only a couple of bucks. I buy these by the thousands because we do a lot of stuff here. So if you need good gaskets, give us a call. I don't sell engine kits. I'm just trying to help out those people that have done this mistake. So let's talk about this, because this just happened for another poor kid. So he puts his intake manifold on and he is getting leaks. Why is he getting leaks? Because the factory studs should be removed to get all of the material. I call them donuts, paper donuts. If you can't get that paper donut off of that stud, that's going to leak. Let's get on the intake side. Yeah, that's the intake side. And so this has to be perfectly smooth, can't have any corrosion coming out, because this is water, this is water. Yeah, water, water. And so this is why his leaked, and why I said he shouldn't use a thin paper gasket. He should use our great big thick gasket. Now, 1.3 intake manifolds, bolt onto 1.6 8-valve heads. So yeah, you can go carbureted. Everybody knows that. You can put my sides on. You can put propane on. You can take a 1.6 8-valve fuel injection system, and you can run it on a 1.3. The new O2 sensor is going to not load the injector very much. You don't have to put in a 1.3 injector, but watch this. If you have a 1.3 fuel injection system and you want to run it on a 1.6 8-valve head, you have to put the 1.6 8-valve injector into the 1.3 throttle body. Isn't that cool? Because that one won't flow enough fuel, and the O2 sensor is going to tell the computer, give me more fuel, give me more fuel. A 1.3 injector can't keep up. And so those kinds of phone calls, people go, wow, it's got so much more power now. Why don't you give it more gas? Thank you for watching the videos. Go wheeling, be safe, have fun, and thank you very much for sharing. I've seen a lot of A lot of you now are taking my videos, putting them on Facebook, and telling people to check it out, because it's all about knowledge. I'm going to try to do better and keep politics out of it. You listen, I'm just a Suzuki guy, cheap Suzuki guy like you. Hopefully, you'll buy our products, you'll tell people about us. We're here because of God's grace. So we love you guys. Thank you so much for everything. Thank you for supporting us. I'm just very grateful. My birthday was yesterday, my wife's birthday today, so I want to say happy birthday, Debbie. Love you very much. And I will see you, and we'll go do something today. I'm going to not work today. Yay. Bye-bye, everybody.